Hey everyone, and welcome to February's Instructor Community Call, February 2023. It's hard to believe that we're already 2 months in, but we are. My name, as always, is Kyle Rosenthal. I am a Microsoft Certified Trainer and Account Executive here at Skillable. My contact details are there. You can also reach me on Twitter if you like, at Windows PC Guy. We do have a great session lined up today. I always say that, but it's always good. As we go through, if you want to win something from us, then please post on social media that you're attending today. And if you want to share something that you're hoping to learn from today as well, just to get a little bit of interaction. And that's all of our social media items. So at Skillable on Twitter, Skillable on LinkedIn, Skillable on Facebook, and at Skillable Labs on Instagram. Insta, as the kids call it, I'm reliably told. So today what we're looking to do is just a general sort of welcome. There is a couple of items to mention around some changes to some upcoming Microsoft courses that you might have already been aware of. Then we're going to have a chat with Paul Gregory, who's joining in. So Paul is a Microsoft Certified Trainer of renown. We've got Bev who's joined us as well. I'm not sure why Bev's joined us, but we might pull her into conversations as well. So I didn't tell her that, so we'll see. Here we go. And then just a reminder of some of our instructor offers, and also then an open sort of bit of chat and conversation and Q&A session. All right, and we'll try and keep it as tight as possible onto our timing. I know last time we went over, but that was because we've had quite a good conversation towards the end. But we'll try and make sure we pull it through this time. So the main thing that I just wanted to mention is some of our updates was just on Azure Pass. So some of you might have already seen this or been affected by it. That Microsoft are migrating more of their courses away from using Azure Passes. Now, Microsoft will announce, they announce that when there's a plan for something to be migrated across, it goes into what's called the title planner for Microsoft, and that sort of gives a timing as to when Microsoft expect the courses to be revisited or reissued with this new sort of format. That means that us as authorized lab hosts, we then need to make sure we have the conversion in place, and we have resources in place for you to be able to still present, obviously, the course without using Azure Passes. And we'll have a bit more of a discussion with that with Paul in sort of some of the changes and that sort of thing that might occur in your delivery and that sort of thing. But you might recall from last month's session when we had Nathan in, how we kind of go about making those changes and the sort of the testing that we go through to make that in place. But I just wanted to call out a couple of things. So obviously, AZ104, AZ700 have already had that change occurred to it. And coming up very shortly is the changes to DP203, AZ204, AZ220, and AI102. Now, as part of that process, you'll see a new version of the course appearing, and that new version of the course that appears will have mentioned at the end of the name of no Azure Pass required, right? And that then means it's being converted across into a format that doesn't need that. Okay, and again, most of you would have come across some of those courses by now, I would assume, particularly if you are training in the Azure in the Azure space. But otherwise, there are more changes coming up, and you're going to see this more and more coming out as we progress through the year. Microsoft, is looking to migrate as much as possible away from having to use Azure Passes. And again, we'll talk about some of the benefits and that sort of thing of that shortly. But it's just something to be aware of. And if the training center you're at aren't aware of these changes, they may come to you and go, hey, we've gone to schedule a class and it doesn't seem to have Azure Passes that we can get from the courseware marketplace anymore. And of course, as instructors, you can get Azure passes, but they're for your use rather than for student use. So don't sort of go to think of the habit of, oh, well, I'll just go and get Azure passes now. In addition to that, the actual courses themselves are rewritten so they don't require them. So therefore, things like steps and that sort of thing won't match up if you are, attempting to use it with an Azure pass. All right, so that's it. A little bit of news, a little bit of a heads up to make sure that you're aware of what's coming out. All right, so now we move on to fireside chat with Paul Gregory. So Paul is a solutions engineer here at Skillable. So Paul, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's great to be here, and really glad to be spending the 45 minutes with you.
Yeah, no, appreciate your time. I guess can I just get a bit of get you to give us a little bit of background around you, where how long you've been at Skillable, what you do. Like solutions engineer is very much a nebulous sort of term and that thing, and maybe some of your background as well.
Yeah, sure. So okay, so let's go way back. So
we've only got 45 minutes.
Yeah, so I did start in the IT industry back in the 80s, but effectively from an educational point of view, I started being a Microsoft certified instructor back in the mid 90s. So the good old days of anything from Microsoft Mail to Windows for Workgroups to obviously into Windows NT. And in those days, like a lot of people of my type, I was also a Novell CNI as well, so I was teaching NetWare. But as the 90s went on, fully became immersed in the Microsoft platform, and I spent my whole time, in the Windows Server, SQL Server, and System Center predominantly was my area. And then, of course, when we started to transition to the cloud, in the sort of infrastructure as a service space initially, and rather than the sort of more developer side. So some of you might be aware that so actually most of that time I was working for QA in the United Kingdom, and delivering courses. I was actually head of Microsoft Learning for quite a while, so developing content for effectively our bespoke customers and content as well. About it was nearly sort of 2.5 years ago that I got approached by somebody not a million miles away from us, saying, "Oh, there's a position here at Skillable. Would you be interested?" And obviously, it was in the sort of thick of COVID and one thing and another. And actually, I'd just actually had to make a load of people redundant and things, so life wasn't good for me at the time. So I thought I need to change, because I'd been at QA for nearly 23 years at that point. And so I actually came across and effectively was a customer success manager at the time. So effectively taking customers that had signed and really helping them get the best out of the Skillable platform. And we reorganized internally, and that's when I become a solutions engineer. So in terms of my role today, you can think of me a bit like the classic technical pre-sales type role. So it's really about supporting our account execs when they're talking to new customers, and talking about how we can take what the customer wants to do, deliver it on the Skillable platform. So very much outside of the mock arena, very much about, customers bringing their solution. So I'm working quite extensively at the moment with customers in the medical industry and actually bringing immersive learning experiences to our platform. So that's the sort of thing that I'm doing at the moment.
Okay. And so, just a sort of a general sort of question, I guess, around training and that sort of thing. In the time that you've had in the industry, obviously quite a long time. How have you seen things change? Like, what's the biggest changes that you've noticed, or like in either in the classroom, in delivery, or even in the students?
Okay, so I guess obviously, it's all of them. So I guess really the thing that I've actually discovered over the years, especially when I was in the teaching and things, is the amount of time where actually you remember something from the 80s or the 90s, which actually answers a question that is not even covered or talked about today. In the technology. The amount of times I actually have used to have customers say on Windows Server courses, and you was reaching back into one of those areas of Windows that no one ever talks about anymore. You know, things like where you set the system variables, or even login scripts that no one even talks about anymore, and things. So it's amazing how often those sort of things crop up. But actually, because of we're just sort of focused on the way products work now, some of that old stuff's been forgotten. The other thing that for me, I think is a real big difference when educating is, you know, if I go back to when I educated, a lot of it was, oh, there are these features, this is what they do, life's great, let's move on. But actually, in my education, especially in the last sort of couple of years, there's been a lot more of people wanting to know, well, so what? Why do I care about that? What's the significance of that? Rather than just here's what it does and so on. And especially because everyone's got this cyber security view now. So often there's a big element of security with every conversation you have. So it's not about, oh, this improves security. It's a lot more of the so what, prove to me, demonstrate how, which has been quite interesting. So often there's a security element to whole conversations that you're having that you never had 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Okay. I think that's probably probably a really good point, is that I think organizations are probably far more aware of security in general than they used to be. You know, like I don't know, you might remember, like, you know, the I love you virus and the Quantico virus and that sort of thing. Like when those things came out, they were very much oh, what do we do? Oh, well, just don't click on this sort of thing. Like it wasn't there wasn't that sort of permeation of security from the top down or from the bottom up, you know, from how planning actually occurs to keep organizations safe and secure than there is now. So that is a good point. I did see something the other day which was it just reminded me from, like, you know, the things that get forgotten or not used now but potentially might be used, and this is probably not one of those, but I remember I saw something the other day which was, if you saw like if you see, you know, set blaster equals 220, and I can't remember the rest of it off the top of my head. Like, you know, basically you need to check your pension. So if you understand what that means, and so there'll be some of the people that are watching today who will understand what that means, and I know, Paul, you had a knowing nod there when I saw that. I went, oh yeah, okay, yeah, good point. But there are things like that you don't do anymore, like that you don't have to. But like, you know, obviously that's not probably one of them. But things like login scripts, like, it's a very simple solution to something but we ignore it. We move past it now, like to other things. So yeah.
But I think the thing that's really, obviously, you think about the courses that you were showing in terms of obviously moving away from Azure passes, and of course obviously all cloud related. And I think it's amazing the way cloud has actually changed organizations' focus with security as well, because, you know, whether you've got an organization that's you know, pro cloud and they want to move to the cloud, or they're moving, or even if you've got a company that's sort of anti-cloud and they don't want to go that way, often, you know, one of the questions in every scenario is security. Or we move to the cloud, so how are we going to secure it? Or we're not going to the cloud because of security. But what that's actually done is it's just made everybody think of security, you know, because also they all realize that even if you're a company that's not going to the cloud and you're not going because of security reasons, you realize you're connected to the internet. So it's just made people outside of IT, especially that exec level and stuff, ask those questions more.
Yeah. I think that's like the IT is becoming far less of just being seen as a cost center in organizations. It is now being seen as an enabler. And you're right, like, sort of, you know, sometimes that enablement is in the cloud, but it's also, you know, it starts that conversation, which also might go in other directions. So yeah, that's a good point. So in the time, like before you left QA, I would suspect that you were involved in some of the courses that changed across at that point into a non-Azure Pass type course, just getting onto that sort of thing. How did you find that delivery changed? Did it make it easier? Did it make it harder? Did it make it both?
So in some ways it made it both. So one of the things that was quite interesting with the way that we at QA delivered the Azure courses is we would use the Microsoft official material really almost as something that was going to guide the subjects you was going to talk about, but didn't really use the material. So one of the things that often happened was during, let's say you take something like AZ 104 or I can't remember what it was called back then, but obviously the 5-day or 4-day Azure admin course. Often what we would do is we would build up a solution during the week. So actually you wouldn't be in this build, destroy, build, destroy, build, destroy, and treat each subject individually. You know, you'd build some storage, you'd build some networking, and then you'd build virtual machines which leverage that, and then maybe a web server and so on, and start to build up almost like, think of it like you build a small company's infrastructure over the course of a week.
Right.
Okay, and of course with the sort of moving away from Azure passes, you can't do that because the labs that you're provided run for a shorter period of time. They've got a more limited set of resources that you can provision in each of the lab instances. So what we found was for some customers that was actually a much better way, because it allowed them to focus on the subject in question and not get distracted. So but for other people, they prefer the whole, well, how would I use this in conjunction with this feature and things which you couldn't do. So you sort of found for some it was better, for some it was worse. And I think, the one thing that becomes really important for me as an instructor, or me as an instructor back then, was the fact that I still had an Azure Pass, and of course also had my MCT Azure subscription. What that allowed me to do was effectively differentiate my capability through demonstrations for what the actual audience wanted. Sometimes meant a few late nights just building stuff to be ready to demonstrate it and show them the following day, of course. But it allowed me to sort of, actually do that value add, which I find sometimes instructors find difficult to do, but it actually enabled me to do that.
So that's an important point, I guess, is that as instructors, we're not trapped within the realms of whatever course it is. And that's whether it's an Azure Pass or a non-Azure Pass course. There's always going to be limits as to what you can do within the amount of credit that's in a pass. Whereas with, as an MCT, one of the MCT benefits we have, of course, is to be able to start up an Azure Pass if you need to. But it's also, we have that benefit of a MCT Azure subscription as well. So you've got, that recurring, the recurring amount to be able to do the demonstrations in as well. So that's, I think that's probably. And I would also say that that's probably something that, regardless of what sort of course it is, whether it's an Azure course, whether it's a data course, whether it's BI, whether it's a server course, the difference between a good delivery and a bad delivery is always down to the instructor in the room, right? It's and being able to glean that. Oh, this is something else it's not in the course, but I know that because of the question you just asked, this is what you're looking for, this is what you're thinking of, and you kind of demonstrate outside of that and being able to move between the box of what's in the courseware and move to outside of that. I think it's a pretty powerful tool as an instructor to be able to do. And certainly, I think it's something that as a new instructor, that takes a little bit of, it takes some confidence to be able to do, because as new instructors generally don't, you're generally focused on the box, right? You're focused, and when I say the box, because you would remember this when we had the courseware that came in the box, you're focused in the content of what's actually within the course. So moving outside of that is not it takes some confidence to be able to do. But I always say, like, there's like to new instructors and that's the thing. There's a reason that you're the instructor. Like you're there because you are the smart person in the room, because you know something. Now, I don't know, you've probably had the circumstance where you've had people who are in the class, the students, who know more about a particular subject than you do. Like that's it's just always it's gonna happen. It's a matter of pulling them in and using them as a resource, but also knowing that they probably know a lot about this very small portion, whereas your power is the fact that you know a lot about a lot rather than a lot about a little. So,
no, I think there's some really good. I think there's some really good points there in terms of actually, you sometimes get these experts, and I've certainly had experts that also want to challenge the instructor, and so that they're great people to use in the course. You get to a new module, and the first thing you do is you turn around to that person and say, hey, Kyle, have you used this feature? So what have you done in your organization with this feature? At which point you end up with two responses. They either come back with something that's really valuable, or they go, oh, I've not really used that. And then they don't ask anything during the rest of the module. They keep quiet, so it's always, as you say, something you bring into the conversation, which is a great way. I think the other thing, which I think for new instructors, and I think it's always important to sort of mention this, and I'm pretty sure everyone on here has had the same experience. I remember when I was teaching effectively a brand new subject, sometimes I would go off piste a little bit and I'd start to go down a particular road, and I could feel that I'm getting to the edge of my knowledge.
Yeah.
And at which point I'm sort of saying, right, how do I end this in a way that doesn't look like I've abruptly ended it, in case someone wants to ask me a question, because I haven't got somewhere to go because I'm getting to the end of my knowledge.
Yeah.
And of course, as a new instructor, just the last thing is, you're not actually there to know the answer to everything. Sometimes it's, I don't know and I need to find out, and that's never a problem.
So it isn't a problem, but it's how you say it as well.
Yeah,
like, I always used to be like, whenever I was trading, I'd be very upfront. That hey, when we go through here, there will be someone that will ask a question that I don't know the answer to, and so as part of my introduction was that my response will be is I will make up an answer. And people would laugh and I'd go, but I'll tell you I'm making it up. I'll tell you I don't know, but I think it's this. And I always used to kind of to use the analogy of knowledge being, particularly in the Microsoft space, of being sort of like it's like RAID, right? You might have this information here, you might have this information here, but the bit in the middle is missing. But because you've got this information and this information, you can probably make up what's in the middle. And so that's what I'd say. It's like, I don't know the answer, but this is what I think it is, and surmise an answer. But then that would be my homework to go and find out if I was right or wrong and report back. But that, again, as a new instructor, if someone was a new instructor, it is a hard thing to admit that you don't know everything, because you're like, oh no, I'm here. I've got to know everything. They're expecting me to know everything, and rightly so, as you said, like you don't, there's no way. And particularly, say for instance, like with things like Azure as an example, where there is new products being added all the time, and things change all the time, that there'll be something that will come up that okay, that's a brand new product that's just been released today. I have no idea what that is. I remember having a conversation with someone at an Ignite. It was when Synapse first got released, and I'd never heard of the product, and I had someone, a friend of mine who's a journalist, who came and said, "So Synapse, what is it?" And I have no idea. I've literally not heard of it until today. And then I was actually doing an interview with so after that I was having an interview with one of the folk from the Synapse team, and before that I had to sort of just do a really quick, what the heck is this, so that I could ask the intelligent questions. And then as part of that, it then sort of started to filter in. Oh, okay. Oh, this is like, I can kind of put analogies to what this is from what my knowledge is, and then kind of work that way. And then I was able to go back to my friend and go, well, this is what it is, blah, 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 and in that sort of plain space. But yeah, like it is that powerful, there are it is a powerful set of words to use in a class, which is, but it can be quite painful, is I don't know. But it is like, and as you said, like, if you say, like, particularly if you're in a class where you are delivering to a group of people who are all from diverse backgrounds, diverse organizations, that sort of thing, opening that up to everyone else and say, hey, I don't know, but has anyone used whatever this product is? And then pull that in. And it's part of that discussion that I think that we get a lot of when you're in that in-person sort of training, is pulling in other people's experience. Yep. So I just wanted to kind of pivot just on that, and it was a good sort of segue to ask the question: how have you found things have changed in delivery between, say, in-person instructor-led and virtual instructor-led?
So I guess the biggest thing, and actually this is where some Skillable features can be very powerful, actually, is it's easier for people to disengage from the training. It's easier for people to hide in virtual training. So sometimes you could have situations where in a classroom environment, you could detect people are not very confident. And often what you could do is you could bring them into the class, because you could have discrete one-to-one conversations with them while they're doing labs, those sort of bits, just sit there with a cup of coffee with them. And effectively you could do that confidence boosting, so that actually when you get to those more interactive parts of a class, that they're happier to join in, and you could do that. That's the bit that's really hard in virtual led training, because it's hard to have that private conversation with the individual, because you don't really have that environment where you can look like you're having a one-to-one conversation, but it doesn't look like it's a one-to-one conversation. So that's that. So that's like the real bit for me in terms of handling sort of those users and that scenario. Really, that was the key difference. But I think if I think about some of the things that I was doing with some of the Skillable products for the course content that we was offering, which actually really enabled users to engage in the class more, was actually the technologies around our knowledge checking with activities, because effectively you're giving people tasks to do, and they're actually checking their work, and they're getting nice green ticks in the lab instructions that they're doing it all right. When you then come to those review parts and you're then going to talk about those things, those people are happier to get involved because they've got the green tick. They've got that bit of confidence. So it actually breaks down that barrier. So I think, if the tools you use have got that type of capability, then that's one of the things that can actually bring people into the conversations. Because again, sometimes, obviously, if you've got those people that are hiding, if you try to call them out a little bit, then obviously that just makes the whole situation worse for them. Obviously the other side of that is, I think icebreakers are far more important in virtual training than they ever were in the classroom-based environment. Because just by the fact that, you sort of say good morning to everybody, and often there might be a handshake, or you might be, handing out name cards and or whatever it might be, there's actually this natural breakdown of barriers in a physical classroom environment, which you don't have in a virtual environment. So I think icebreakers become far more important in virtual-based training, to try and again not get those people disengaged early on.
Yeah, and also to keep them to keep pulling them back into conversations and that sort of thing. So yeah, like similar sort of comments. Like if I was looking at it is. I think there's two challenges that I find with virtual instructor-led training. It is that engagement. It's also that there's a tendency now to put more people in a class as well. So therefore, you've got more people who you need to kind of now manage and try and order. And it is hard, because you can't see that look on people's faces when they don't get something. If people are. If people don't turn on their cameras, which is fine. Like there are really good reasons why people don't do that now. But that makes it hard for to be able to not see that sort of thing, like, like to get the I don't understand what it was you're saying. Whereas in a classroom, it's kind of it's easy. Like, you can see someone who's just sitting there going with their head in their hand going. But it's interesting that you brought up the sort of some of the platform goodness as well. Like, sort of, there's also things like the over the shoulder sort of like instructor monitoring as well, where you can look to see, on a page, see what's going on with students and whether they're actually doing the labs and that sort of thing. And then you can, see if there's a screen of red and, call it, hey, Bob, are you, is everyone okay? And the ability to be able to do that the thing that we would do in the classroom normally of doing the walk around and, seeing what people are doing. And then, as I said, spotting things like the screen of red PowerShell. We can do that virtually, and we can also then reach over the shoulder to be able to assist as well, which I think is that's some of the benefits, or some of the things that make that virtual training or the virtual instructor-led training a little bit of an easier function to do. I just wanted to call back to one other thing, and you touched on pretty much all the benefits of using the the Azure Pass versus non-Azure Pass. That's the other thing that I wanted to call out with the Azure, not using having the non-Azure Pass courses, because you can redo the course, redo the module. That's one thing that if I found, and you probably found this as well, if you issue out someone with an Azure Pass and then they just go completely crazy, I've had circumstances where, on those 5-day courses, where at the end of day 3 or day 4, you've got a student who is, for whatever reason, left things running or whatever, and then they go, well, I don't have any credit left. What am I supposed to do for the next 2 days? So that's a major benefit that I see with doing things like the Azure Pass, the non-Azure Pass courses, is that they can repeat those sort of things without having to keep on using up Azure credits and that sort of thing, and being pinned within that certain spend limit. So that was, and there's also the Monday morning going and redeeming an Azure Pass, and don't redeem
those logistics. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Don't do this in your work Azure, in your work Azure account. Okay, I won't. Oh,
I have.
I have, or I've just deleted. I did have someone that deleted a whole bunch of their actual production databases, because they ran one of the scripts that was just the cleanup script, and it's like, so how do I get that back? It's, well, you don't.
I think they'll be actually have a really good call out, actually, which is obviously following on in terms of this ability to redo from the clean environment and not running out of money, is actually the period of access that potentially a student gets as well. So I know we generally only allow the student to launch each lab 5 times, but they can launch each lab 5 times over a 6-month period, rather than just the 30 days that an Azure Pass would last if they've still got some money left.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So that means you can go back and practice things again over a longer period. And then you also, you don't have, you're not getting down to that, oh, how much credit do I have left to be able to do this? I just go and do the activity. So yeah, okay, great. All right. Well, Paul, thank you very much. That's been really awesome. I've really appreciated that little bit of conversation. Can you stick around just for a bit? We do move in now to our a couple of sort of housekeeping type items, and then we're going to open up to the floor for the last sort of 5-10 minutes or so. Just a reiteration for those that have joined us, maybe that haven't joined us before, or listening to or looking to do what you can do within the environment. Go to skillable.com/offers. And that's where you can sign up for all of our instructor offers. So the instructor offers include the full mock lab access. So that's all for the Microsoft's official content, so all of the labs that are contained within there. As well as that, if you're an MCT, you can sign up for an all-access pass to our challenge labs, and we'll talk about those in just a second. And we also have that same offer for any AWS instructors as well. So, and regardless of either of those, it's all of the labs, which are just under 1,100 challenge labs that are available now. In addition to that, and I'm really glad that Debbie mentioned this. So Debbie, congratulations on your 10 classes badge, because that's part of our instructor recognition, right?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Paul.
Oh, congratulations! Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you.
It's a pretty lofty goal of getting 50 by the end of the year, but I think you're going to be tired by the end of the year. There's only 52 weeks, but well done, congratulations.
Thank you. That's just a goal anywhere. It's just like a target, and we never can tell it could be possible.
Yeah, for sure. And so have you, just to put you on the spot, have you just started doing training, or is it have you been training for a while?
Yes, I've been training for a while. I think more than 2 years now. Okay.
And then, but only more recently on the Skillable platform.
I do train for different academy, but there are some academy I train for that schedule on Skillable, because
Sure.
I've actually trained more than 10 classes, but I think only the ones recorded with Skillable. And just like today, again, I got a badge for 75 students reached. Of course, I've trained more than 75 students, but I think just only the ones recorded on Skillable. Yeah.
Gotcha. And the other thing, just to call out as well, so for anyone who might be in that circumstance where you are, so you're right, it's on the Skillable platform. You may have, there may be some folk that are out there that have, if you're like a contract instructor or move around a bit, you might have different accounts with different organizations that you do that training with. So just one thing to mention is that if you are wanting to bring all of those together for badging purposes, you might have 10 over here, 20 over here, etc. Then you can contact us and we can then consolidate those as well. So therefore, because obviously we don't otherwise know which account is it should actually be, it should be linked together and that sort of thing. So, but if you do that, we can consolidate those. So if you've got the courses you've caught with different organizations, we can, as I said, bring those all together to be able to get your proper numbers or your real numbers as well. So, but yeah, congratulations, Debbie. That's really good. So
thank you once again. Thank you so much.
No problems at all. All right. So the other thing, just to sort of mention, I always pull these out, is the Skillable challenges. We mentioned that as being something that we have as an offer. So Ashley, I'm just going to put you quickly on the spot here. Is there anything in particular that you want to pull out for what's coming up in the next month or so?
You're on mute, Ashley.
Oh, I'm batting it out of the park today. So first of all, I realized I didn't have my camera on until that, and then hey, I apparently don't know how to work a microphone either. So hey, shooting batting 1,000 here. Just to let you guys know what is coming down the line. We do have some new topics that will be coming down and primarily aligned with, I want to say, Microsoft and their security courses and exams. So SC200, SC300 will be coming this quarter. There will be other areas, again, like I say, that just won't say quite as robust, but there will be other areas, like say, that are being released. However, what we're really putting the pedal to the metal on is a new and improved end of lab report, so students can actually see, I want to call it kind of a quick temperature check of a yellow, red, green, of hey, I did really well, or oh, I could probably use a little bit of work. So it's kind of at a top line view of those challenges, but then we also give them a little bit more of a drill down view. So let's just say in particular that a challenge lab is comprised of 4 requirements. We can show them almost, well, not even almost, but we can show them a red, yellow, green on each one of those requirements as well. So I think it's going to be a lot more impactful. Initially, like I say, so students, like I say, just know how they're doing, but not only how they're doing, because it really the ones they need to focus on, you know, just to continue that. So more to come on that. We're hoping, like I say, to actually have some demos that will kind of show that. So again, folks don't have to go through and complete a challenge necessarily just to see what it's all about. But we're super excited about that. And like I say, be a huge priority for us this quarter to really enable that new, like I say, end of lab report. So that's what's coming.
Great. So we might be able to show some examples of that in the coming months in the coming month session. So
100%.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Ashley. Appreciate the ad.
Good to see your faces now that I'm finally seeing mine. I know, sorry about that. Right.
All right, and then just the last couple of minutes, we might just wrap up if there are any questions that folk might have, anything that we've discussed, or anything in general that around the Skillable platform. That's the thing that's troubling you as an instructor. If you want to jump in, any comments, that sort of thing would be more than welcome. I can see that Debbie's typing something, so I might just wait for in there. And then while we're looking at that, we might also pull up the resources as well. So some of the links that we've got too, that you can then use to be able to get in contact with us, or really important to be able to give us some feedback as well. If there's things that you want to be able to give us some feedback on. Debbie, so the challenge, I think the challenge that you might be referring to is the challenge labs that we have. So that's it, so part of that is the cybersecurity. So we do have some cybersecurity topics that are in there. And to sign up for those challenge labs to get access to those, if you go to skillable.com/offers, and it's the MCT All Access Pass that you're going to sign up for within there. So we do ask for some details about you, so that we know who to link it to. But yeah, then you'll be able to get access to it. So those the labs that you'll have access to, those challenge environments, cover across a whole range of topics. So, and the idea is that as instructors, it gives you the ability to be able to fill in those blanks, right? So things that you may not necessarily use. So I have a look at them for things like AWS. I'm not an AWS person at all, but I use that to be able to bump up a little bit of knowledge. So if I'm talking to someone about Azure and they say, hey, how does this compare to AWS? I can say, well, this is a similar sort of thing. Like this storage account is this, this equivalent in AWS. So make sure you use those resources. It's a really good resource for us as instructors that we have that ability to be able to pull in. All right. So has anyone else got any questions before we wrap up? Warren, of course you can. Do you want to come off mute and ask?
Okay. Yeah. I'm just curious if I'm using the right approach. So I've been training for, I aged myself because the first course I taught was DOS. but the question is, when I'm using the Contoso, so if I'm teaching those labs, is it okay? Is it a good approach? Sometimes instead of the labs, I use the accounts within their actual computers. I know when you use the lab, it's great because we can then go and we can see all of them on my screen. Then I can go and I can help anyone but depending on the group, and I tell them that they have 60 days to use that account. Is that accurate?
So do you mean that the account that's provided as part of the lab?
Yeah. So if I'm teaching Power BI and
Right.
they and then I assigned the different characters or profiles to these people.
Sure.
Sometimes I have found, and maybe this is the wrong approach, but I have found it works where I just give them the profile and then they log in using that profile.
So the only thing I'd say, so like my answer to you, and Paul will back me up on this, is that however you train, that's the right approach for you. Like, you know, that
Okay.
like that, you know, I'm never going to argue with no, that's not the right way to do it, because it's your classroom. So
Right.
you know, like the mentor that I had when I first started training said like that when the door closes, it's your room. So however you want to do
Right.
it and however works for you, that's up to you. The so yeah, so however you do it and you're comfortable with it, that's exactly perfect. The one thing I just to call out is depending on how that account is being created, some
Right.
accounts will last for that longer period of time because they'll be instant. Look, they'll be created at that point.
Right.
Some of them only live for as long as that particular instance is going. So like you might find like if you're finding it's okay for the particular instance that like the particular course you're running, then that's perfect. But just bear in mind that some of them, like say for instance, some of the courses we actually create an account which lives for the 90 minutes of that particular lab. And then in the back end, once that 90 minutes is gone, regardless of whether you're finished or not, like whether, you know, what's going on, we'll actually tear it down because it uses resources and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I was just going to say, because I understand that, like if it's a course where I don't use the Contoso electronics,
Right.
you know, tenant, if I don't use that, you know, fictitious company or whatever,
Yeah.
I realize that the other accounts that they get are just temporary accounts that you get rid of.
So
Okay.
yeah, so that would be my only advice, is just to make sure that you keep an eye on that, like sort of, and you might find that say a new version of a course when it comes out, just check to make sure that like, you know, that length of time that you're relying on is still, you know, works in that particular in that particular circumstance.
Okay, great, thank you.
So, yeah. Paul, have you got anything to add to that, or?
No, I think, you know, as you say, the important thing is, you know, you teach the way that you're comfortable, and if you've got a system that's working for you and it's working for the people that you're teaching as well, which is at the end of the day, we're doing knowledge transfer. And if those people are walking out the room with the skills that they need, then what you're doing is the correct way. So, as I say, just you know, I guess what I would always say is if you pick up a new course, just if you want to teach that way, make sure you test the course that way before you do your first delivery, so you know it's going to work as you expect it to. Just don't assume that all courses will work the same way.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Warren. It's a good question. So the I'd like to, so as I've given a few of the sort of the things that I you know I say within a class, my introduction, which is you'll ask me a question, if I don't know the answer, I'll make it up. My other one that I always used to leave classes with, or like you leave that end part of the introduction, was that my goal at the end of a class is that you will leave knowing something that you didn't know when you started. So and that's where that knowledge transfer comes in that Paul mentioned, is it sort of, so if you have a student, some students will have a much bigger light bulb moment than other students. I'm sure that in today there'll be in the call today there'll be some folk who will have had lots of things. Oh, I can try that, I can do this, etc. But others will have small little portions that have gone through. So basically, if you've learnt anything from today at all, no matter how small, then that means I've won. So that's good. I appreciate it.
And the thing I find that really works too is that, like, I know you were talking about a comparison between live and virtual, and I find that even if it's a big group, I still do it, and people, it sort of buys them into it when I ask for their experience and expectations. So I'll go through the whole list, even if there's 15, 20, I don't care. And they'll go through and they'll give their expectations. But I love, and it works with Zoom. One of the great things about virtual is, just like you mentioned, sometimes in the classroom there could be people that are having difficulties, but they don't want to stand out in the classroom. So the great thing is that I'll tell them, please, I'm the idea. If you just want to put something in chat rather than give me your experience and expectations, no problem. But I said, please, please, please ask questions. Ask as many questions. If you want me to repeat things like 100 times, please let me know, but send me private messages. So nobody can tell. And I tell them, and every question that you ask, I promise I'm going to say, someone asked this, to repeat this. Someone asked a good question, and I'll say it. But I get more of that compared to sometimes if I'm teaching teams. Unfortunately, unless you have an account with that organization, you can't have that private
message.
That's the only part I don't like, but that's what I love about Zoom.
Yep, no, fair enough. And that's like, different delivery methods will give different benefits as well, which is good. So if you can find those and work around them, then that makes all the difference for how the interaction occurs between you and the student. So
right.
Yeah.
So I often used to find, so when I used to use early days of WebEx when I was at QA and stuff like that, it didn't have any form of private messaging. So it was often, making sure that my email address was always visible and people actually being able to email me if they wanted to sort of ask me something privately. So that was always my route for that, to sort of provide that path,
Good.
The other thing, because I mentioned icebreakers, you can use this one if you want. One of the icebreakers I always used to use was, especially in the classroom, but I did it in virtual as well. I used to write across the top of the whiteboard, the old classic, there's no such thing as a stupid question, because that's what we always say as instructors. And then you get the first person to ask a question, and then you turn around and wipe that off the board. Makes everybody laugh.
That's funny.
It's a good way of making sure there's no more questions for the week. I love it, Paul. No? I always used to say there's no such thing as a stupid question, but I can't guarantee the veracity of the answers. So all right. Well, I think it's time for us to wrap up for today. So thank you very much for those that attended. So really appreciate that. For those that are listening to this afterwards, come and join us live one time. Ashley, thank you for your time today and answering some of those questions. And Paul, thank you very much for dropping in. Really appreciate it. It's always good to get another someone else from the Commonwealth to join as well, so don't feel quite as outnumbered. No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invite.
That's all right. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.